in retrospect, like all the validation interviews we did sort of were pointed at, yeah, this would be amazing. This would really help us understand, how to improve our applications better, so forth. We had about 25 validation interviews before we even started writing any kind of specs or for like what an MVP would be. And I think one of the mistakes that we made in that whole exercise, the questions we asked were there to reaffirm what we thought we knew versus them being kind of more open-ended. My name's Prabhjot Singh. I'm the CEO of Pies.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Prabhjot Singh is leading the charge to digitally transform low-touch processes and task mining. All this and more on Code Story. Prabhjot Singh has been in enterprise software for the last 22 years, so he's seen a thing or two. He joined Citibank out of school and did a leadership program there for 10 months. Post that, he progressed into the startup world and never left. He got to be a part of early-stage growth, acquisitions, and scaling businesses over a short period of time. He's married and the father of a 4-year-old, which he notes keeps him sane during his startup life. He mentions that a huge blessing from the pandemic has been the time he's been able to spend with his wife and daughter, working on a fully remote team. They started hiking during the pandemic to balance the lack of activity, and, of course, to use all of their daughter's energy so she would sleep at night. He started out his current venture in the B2C space. When they weren't seeing the user growth they needed, they pivoted their capabilities to fit the enterprise over the average Joe consumer, with the mission of making enterprises successful. In doing so, they realized that their focus shouldn't just be the application. It should also be the process. This is the creation story of Pies.
Pies is all about helping organizations achieve operational excellence. So helping each company execute at its best and most efficient ability. And what that means is we analyze key business processes that a company does, and we identify how they can execute those processes better, right? And we do that at 2 levels. We will do that at a workflow level, right? So think about an insurance company, right? That what does an insurance company do, right? They sell insurance policies. So there's sort of a deal management system, right, that looks at how those policies get sold, all the way from initiation, all the way to kind of that sale being made, right? They process claims, and they do customer service, right? So there's a few critical functions that every business has to do in order for them to be successful. And what Pies has done is really automated this process of understanding how work gets done within an organization and mapping that and visually displaying that and identifying where there's bottlenecks, right? So we do that at the process level and the workflow level to sort of show, hey, there's 10 different ways that you can sell an insurance policy or process a claim. And these patterns are inefficient or cost the company a lot more than these other patterns, right? So you can then address those with, whether it's better training or automation, right, or re-architecting how the flow of work happens. That's one aspect of what we do. And then as you drill down a little bit, right, if one of my key processes is customer service, right, there's tasks that people have to do to execute that process, right? Someone has to do intake, whether it's through email or someone calling in, right? There's escalations that happen where you might need to get a manager involved. There's some back and forth in terms of document processing. So we then drill down at the task level to help identify where there's issues with task processing, right? So the goal is make the process efficient and make your people as productive as they can be doing what they're doing. So we do that for some of the largest enterprises in the world. We actually started, in the B2C space, right? Business to consumer space, looking at helping people make their mobile applications more effective and more productive, right? So think about it as like Flurry 2.0 or a better version of Google Analytics. And it was sort of a freemium product that we initially built and launched to the market. And in order to make a business like that scale, you really need millions of users, right? Because it was a free solution to start with. We had sort of a data monetization angle to it. We had premium services that we started to offer on top of that. And we got to tens of thousands of users, but it really didn't feel like we were going to get to millions of users, right? So we did a pivot, right? And we said, okay, well, we've got these amazing capabilities that we've used, and what we essentially realized was our capabilities were kind of overkill for the average Joe mobile developer. So we kind of went back a bit to the drawing board. We looked at the capabilities that we had, the technical assets, and then we looked at, okay, how can we apply these to the enterprise, right? With a mission of helping enterprise applications be successful. And as soon as we did that, it became very clear that it wasn't just about the application, right? Applications, especially in the enterprise context, enable processes, right? Whether it's, as a financial institution, I'm helping originate loans and then processing those loans, right? Or if I'm a rideshare company, right, I'm onboarding drivers and I'm providing customer support to drivers and riders, and I'm helping orchestrate a process in which someone has to book a car, right? So there's different capabilities that are needed to help facilitate an end-to-end process in a company. And we very quickly went from this focus on applications to a focus on processes. But because we had these capabilities around understanding user behavior and user interactions in an application, we could be really powerful in not just helping describe the process, but actually help with the task mining that's required to improve productivity at the lowest level of the process. So that has been a really fun journey for us in terms of kind of iterating the capabilities, sort of helping working with our customers to define the direction. And now we're focused a lot more on using AI to actually find anomalies in the process, right? So if you think about a supply chain, looking at what are sort of blips or glitches in the overall pattern to be able to identify an issue before it actually becomes an issue.
Well, let's dive into the MVP. So that first product you built, how long did it take to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
Anytime we're thinking about a feature with the product team or the engineering team, or I'm thinking about building something for fun, right? You start with sort of balsamic wireframe, or use whatever your favorite wireframing solution to kind of imagine what that product looks like, right? And from there, you have something that you can go and have a conversation with people, right? Get feedback, sort of understand, well, how is this going to be used to solve the problem that we want to solve? Because I'm a big fan of sort of lean methodology, being able to quickly iterate to get sort of the MVP that you might even be ashamed of right out the door, and but something that actually helps solve even the smallest problem for someone, because that becomes a great starting point, right, to build upon and then iterate on and add more features and add more capabilities. But if you just go full hog and say, okay, I know what I'm going to build, and you build something, you might hit the mark completely. For any product that's sort of a version 1, right, or version 0.1 that you ship, you're gonna make a ton of trade-offs, right? Like I think the thing to think about is, what is the problem that you want that product to solve, to be able to demonstrate value to your customer. And if you've got a good handle of that, then you have to figure out how you're going to solve that problem, because the product is never going to get you 100% of the way, right? Essentially, what you have to do is figure out how you can solve the problem you want to solve with the product, with people, with other tooling, to enable the customer to understand the vision and get that value that you want them to achieve. So when we're making decisions, and so when we initially did the MVP, the automated insights that we wanted to produce, we essentially ran a query once every hour, once every 6 hours, to be able to sort of pull those queries and then manually push them to each customer's account, right? Rather than sort of the AI engine sort of having the pipelines hooked up to it, that was continuously monitoring and looking at that data in real time. So it effectively achieved the same thing, but there was some manual interaction with that, right? Like you could even have someone dig through the data and do it manually, at the very beginning, and that would be a way to potentially get started. I mean, thankfully we had more resources and more capabilities to be able to automate that process to a good extent. But this is sort of an example of the product doesn't necessarily have to fully deliver on the promise. It can be a combination of product, people, other tooling, right, best practices that enables you get to the finish line.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. Okay, so from that point, you're getting to the finish line, right? You got your MVP. How did you go about progressing the product from there and maturing it? And I'm curious how you went about building your roadmap and then figuring out, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
The way we went about doing it was really based on two things. One is our understanding of where the market was going and what the capabilities would be needed in the market. And the second is understanding from our customers the capabilities that they needed, today, or the issues that they were potentially having in terms of using the product. Right. Those are essentially the things that you want to be able to do, is make sure that you address sort of the blocking and tackling things to make the UX super smooth, easy to navigate, make it intuitive. Where there's issues with navigation or because ours is an analytics software, right? If people are interested in, hey, we really love the visualizations you have, but it'd be great if you could add a heat map, right, for instance, as a visualization option. So when we hear enough of that, we drop in a heat map. So that's one aspect of it, is just making sure we're listening to customers, because your customers are the ones that you're focused on making successful. And the whole goal of kind of developing an MVP is to get to sort of product market fit, right? And product market fit, yeah, sure, you could measure it in terms of revenue. A lot of people talk about $1 million in ARR or some financial metric, but to me, it's really about making your first few customers really, really successful and turning them into your advocates, and them sort of getting up every morning, coming to work and being like, oh, I need to check out pies and see how my product did yesterday, how my process is performing, right? Like when you can kind of develop those kind of champions, right, there's certainly this sort of word of mouth viral effect that happens, where they talk to their friends and they talk to their friends, and you have the opportunity to sort of start scaling. But it's got to be focused on kind of making your customer successful, and at the same time, given the resources you have, looking at, okay, what are the other capabilities that I need to add to continue to be a sort of a market leader, or be able to get to where the puck is going, right, so to speak.
Well, let's switch to team. So how did you go about building your team, and what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
With the team, like I said, I've been doing this for the enterprise software for the last 20 odd years. So thankfully, I've got a kind of good network, good cohort of colleagues that I've worked with throughout my career. So I went knocking on the doors of people that I know, right? So whether it's someone I'd known socially for the last 10 years, right? Our chief product officer, Mark Adelman, I've known for the last 20 years, since Wiley, right? And one of, you're not often lucky enough to be able to sort of get to work with people that you've known, you trust implicitly. But when you can, there's certainly an acceleration of work getting done, right? Iteration of ideas, features getting shipped. Everything is much more synergistic because the team is interconnected, right? And that is really important. As you're getting started, right? Like Mantek, who runs operations, customer success, I've known for 25 years, right? So, when you've got kind of that level of trust with the people that you're working with, you can defer decisions, and in this context, like If Mark or Montek is making a decision, like I don't really even need to think about it, right? Because we have implicit trust.
Well, let's flip to scalability then. So did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or are you fighting this as you grow?
Well, the answer is kind of always half and half. We're cloud native, right? We as a company, of course, don't own a single server or laptop. We own laptops, but we as a company don't own a single server or desktop machine. Everything that we do is in the cloud, and that gives us inherent scalability, right? We're never going to run out of compute resources. When we have customers saying, "Hey, we need a data center in Australia or in Ireland or Germany," we can spin those up, instantaneously, right? And that's the power of the cloud, and kind of making decisions that enable us to leverage, the cloud native capabilities, deployment methodologies, right? We use Kubernetes, and essentially everything's designed to just scale from an infrastructure perspective. And of course, we made those decisions early on because those are the right decisions to make. And if we hadn't, it would be really, really painful and really, really expensive to be able to scale our operations the way we're scaling right now. So that's one aspect of it, right? And then the second aspect of it is, as you're developing sort of an MVP or a particular, let's say version 1 or version 2 of the product that you're rolling out, and I think this probably applies forever. I don't think you should be thinking what you'll need 2 or 3 versions ahead from a scalability perspective or being able to manage workload perspective or throughput perspective, because who knows, you might actually be building something completely different, right? So you've got finite resources. You should actually invest those in making sure the customers that you have today and the customers that you'll have tomorrow are successful. And as you make those customers successful, you can start to look at what the next generation of the product should be, and make sure that you're staying ahead of the expected load, right? Otherwise, you have the risk of the system falling over, right? So it's for any business or any startup, rather, I should say, this is a really fine line to walk. And then, of course, as you scale and you have to grow very, very aggressively, you can then afford to sort of over-engineer, right, and have more and more headroom, so to speak, right, in terms of the capabilities that you're rolling out, and how efficient you're making the system overall.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of?
I think it's the team, the people that I work with every day, and the customers, right, that we're working with. We've got some really, really amazing customers that put a lot of trust in our system to help them make decisions on how they should be operating their business, right? Mission critical platforms. We work with large enterprises, right? Colliers International, which is one of the largest global commercial brokerages in the world, the U.S. Air Force, right? The U.S. Post Office, right? So, and we're working with amazing mission-driven people who are all about, making the processes that they manage more effective, more robust, more resilient. And the fact that we get to play a role in enabling that is just amazing.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. So tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
Going back to the initial focus of looking at the B2C model focused on kind of app developers, I think that was like you could look back and objectively call that a big mistake, right? Because that cost us about several months of development, commercialization, and we, in retrospect, like all the validation interviews we did sort of were pointed at, this would be amazing. This would really help us understand, how to improve our applications better, so forth and so on, right? Like we had about 25 validation interviews that we did before we even started writing any kind of specs or for like what an MVP would be. And I think one of the mistakes that we made in that whole exercise was like, I feel like the questions we asked were kind of there to reaffirm what we thought we knew versus them being kind of more open-ended, right? And like, we never expected these developers to actually, pay for the solution, because we know that app developers in general, don't make a lot of money. But I think if we'd asked other questions, we would have realized that, how the product would actually get used and like how many people would actually really, really use it to make decisions wasn't as many as we hoped that there were going to be. And, and that was a big business risk for us, right? Because we sort of kind of built a product, we went to market, right? And of course, right, startups only have finite resources. But I'm really proud of the team because, we did sort of take a step back and we realized that it wasn't working. And we sort of shifted our focus, right, kind of to the enterprise. And that has been a really, really amazing move for us, right? As a team, that's an area that, our team knows really well. We know how to work with enterprise customers, what their challenges are, right? So like our team has the understanding of the DNA of the customers that we're working with. And I think that certainly helped us arrive at the right answer and the right product for the right customer for the right problem. But, it took us time to get there.
What does the future look like for the product and for your team?
The product is really getting focused more and more around, don't just help me visualize the business process and identify problems, but help me identify where I might have problems, right? With that, so tell me what I don't know, right? Or tell me the questions I should be asking that I'm not asking, right? To put it another way, is what people want to know. And the reason for that is that there's so much data out there, right? To generally analyze. And let's say I'm looking at a customer onboarding process, or let's say I'm looking at a manufacturing process, right, in which I'm producing thousands and thousands of parts, or I'm onboarding hundreds of customers, right? Whatever the process is, our tooling has sort of anomaly detection. It provides the ability to look at where there's problems or where there might be problems in the future. That's super helpful to people. We have the ability to kind of look at outliers. I have X number of outliers that are, more than a standard deviation or 2 standard deviations from the mean. Let's look at why those particular transactions are slower than the rest, right? That kind of tooling is really, really helpful in understanding where there's issues and then how to go about resolving those issues. Where we're heading is greater use of AI capabilities to not just sort of help you flag problems that might be occurring, but also make suggestions around remediation, right? That's kind of the next level of helping people navigate the bottlenecks that they have in their processes, right? And then, of course, a step beyond that would be then to integrate with some automation solution to kind of help them automate fixing those issues, which we're starting to do as well with a couple of vendors. So that's sort of the next generation of the product that we're working on and then rolling out and prototyping with some of our customers. As far as the team goes, we are now in a completely distributed world, right? 2 years ago, we had a lease in downtown Redwood City, fantastic location. We all, used to have great camaraderie and get together for team lunches a few times a week. Do team events, right? All of those things we haven't been able to do since the pandemic started. But what we have been able to do is try to replicate that in the virtual world, right? Whether it's kind of, virtual escape rooms, or kind of lunch mixers on Zoom, right? We've been able to do that. We just got the team together for the first time since the pandemic started in just a couple of months ago. And we spent a week just sort of doing kind of VR shooting and like actual escape rooms and just sort of building camaraderie, and I expect to do a lot more of that as we move forward. And given we're saving money with office space and other things, right? We have the ability to then do that in fun places, right? Like I think we're planning to go to Mexico next as a team, for instance. So those are kind of the ways that we're working on sort of building camaraderie, in this sort of distributed world, and then we're hiring people all over the world, right? Like we've got people in India, in the UK, right? We had a bunch of our team members move out of the Bay Area to Houston and Sacramento and other places. So it really is sort of a distributed global team, and that has its own challenges. Right? So we're putting in place kind of the HR systems that we need to be able to manage that. But it'll be interesting to see like when we actually wind up getting an office again.
It gets me really excited the way you talk about grabbing data and helping people think about what are we not thinking about, right? What are we not considering, or where might our next problem be? I think that makes a ton of sense. If you look across IoT and data and all these other things in the world, we'll just say data because it comes from anywhere, and it's being served up right now. I think people are saying, okay, that's great. Now what? Right? And so being able to say, okay, yeah, here's the data, here's what's going on, and here's what you need to be thinking about to solve it, I think is the next big thing.
At the end of the day, the more data you have, the smarter the system can be, right? Like I'm sure you've heard the saying, right? Like the person with the most data wins, so to speak. And it's a bit trite, but oftentimes when we look at a process, and look, a process is a process, right? Whether I'm talking about onboarding for a telco company, or claim processing for an insurance company, or opening a bank account, or financial institution, or manufacturing an electrical part, right? There's a process. There's stages. There's steps. There's tasks. And there's different workflows. There's different ways that work kind of traverses from start to finish. And what we do, right, is hook up the different data sources that are available to fully understand that process, right? So like those data sources would be the actual process data, right? So we can do the analysis. So like how much time is spent at each step of the process, when things go from one step to the next step, right? That kind of information. We'll also bring in employee data, right? So everything from employee seniority to department, region, title. Customers will even bring in payback information, right? So I know that it takes John 30 minutes to do this particular task, but I also know what it costs, right? Me as a company, and by extension of that, I can tell you how much one workflow costs versus another workflow. We'll bring in CRM data, right, about customers, so that we know, is this an SMB customer, what region that customer's in, and then there's attributes, right, for these different data points in terms of like how strategic that customer is, how much revenue they're generating, et cetera, et cetera. And we take all these different data streams, right, and we put that in the Vitamix, right? That's the PI's intelligence platform. And it has the ability to then, make correlations, and then also look at the data, be able to spot anomalies. And the more data streams that we add, the more intelligent the system becomes, basically.
Well, let's switch to you, Prabhjot. Who influences the way that you work? I mean, a CEO, a CTO, an architect, really any person that you look up to, and why?
There's a lot of people that have influenced me in my career. Certainly, like when I was at Citigroup, John Reed was one of those people in terms of understanding kind of how he managed such a large organization. When I was at Wiley, Dick Williams, who was the CEO, and Dick was a guy who'd been at IBM for 25 odd years, worked all over the world. Like he was a very seasoned businessman who kind of came in and really accelerated the growth at Wiley. And I remember this one time I was thinking about, okay, hey, maybe I should go get an MBA, because I was sort of shifting my focus more from the technical side to the business side. And Dick goes, you should just carry a sales bag for a year and knock on doors and get people to buy software. and that was actually a great piece of advice, right? Because as a CEO, you are selling, right, all the time, right? Whether it's VCs or customers or analysts, right, or whatever it is. But having that experience of actually going and selling and engaging, and I think I read a bunch of business books and management books to kind of supplement some of my knowledge, but I think this whole idea of actually getting out in the field and selling was amazing advice that I once got, right? And of course I certainly follow kind of who you'd call the trendsetters in the industry today, but I think there's a lot that you can learn from people who are doing interesting things, not just in the corporate sector, but the nonprofit sector, and I actually have had a couple of really good experiences in which I've had the chance to not just found for-profit companies, but also kind of nonprofits and even a social enterprise, right, along the way. So I think it's important to kind of pick up sort of best practices from sort of different sectors, and I've had a chance to sort of work with people across these different fields that have sort of shaped my thinking.
We talked about a mistake, but a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
I mean, there's so many things that as you look back, you're like, oh, hey, door number 2 might have been better. But look, the grass is always greener, right? Is a saying for a reason. There's always opportunities to do things differently, And it's hard to know how it's going to turn out. I think, like I'll give you an example. Like we had this, we had an acquisition offer a couple of years ago, right? And we, like a bunch of people sort of told me to sell, right, at that point in time. And we, sure, we could have sold and but like at that point in time, I actually felt pretty strongly that we had the opportunity to build a much bigger business, right? And if you sort of look at maybe the first year after that offer, like people probably would have been right in sort of saying, hey, you should sell because, whatever, I could be sitting on an island sipping Mai Tais or something, right? But fast forward 2 years, and absolutely the wrong decision, right? If we had sold the company, because we are scaling so fast, we're building shareholder value, we're helping more customers be successful than ever before, we're signing bigger and bigger contracts. So I think at any given time, you've got to make the best decision that you can with and then be confident in that decision, and then kind of go on it all in till you have data that tells you otherwise, right? Like we did with sort of changing our focus from B2C to enterprise. But as far as kind of just decisions go, I think once you place the bet, you kind of see it through, so to speak, right?
Well, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. They can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
You're in for a roller coaster. Make sure your seatbelts are buckled. Right? And look, if you're building a SaaS business, right, like conservatively, you need to be able to give it 24 months, right, to see real traction and sort of growth starting. I think the advice that I would give is make sure you're in it, right, for the long haul, because you'll have all kinds of things, right, from personnel issues to like funding issues to customer issues and fires and you name it, right? So you really got to be committed to making sure that you're gonna make essentially failure is not an option, right? You have to go in with the mindset of, look, I'm gonna make this successful. I'm committed to making it successful. I'm gonna do what's needed. And if you have that mindset, right, everything else is kind of details. Right, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm a big believer of that. And if you don't have that mindset, if you're like, oh, I'll try this for 6 months, and if it works out, great. If not, then I can go get another job or something, right? If that's kind of the mindset or the approach that you have, like, stick to your day job. It would be my advice, right? Or go get another job that's more satisfying. But entrepreneurship is obviously amazing, and it's so easy these days to become an entrepreneur because of whether it's access to capital or the tooling that exists to sort of get an MVP out the door. If you've got a good idea and you've got commitment, right, you can start that journey, but you got to find the team, and you got to find the money, and you got to find the customers, and those are not easy things to do.
I think that's great advice. Well, Prabhjot, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of pies.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.